Is the secret of secrets actually the fact that this, Dan Brown's newest book, happens to be a science fiction story? Well, the short answer is no. It is not, strictly speaking, a science fiction story. It's a typical Dan Brown, Langdon thriller, silly at times, poorly written through most of it, but interesting, intriguing, full of incredible facts that I had a great time discovering, taking place in a city that I visited just a couple of months ago. I was in Prague, and at least 4 of the locations mentioned in this book are places where I walked around, things I looked at, things I explored. So this added another element of intrigue and fun to me. But getting back to the science fiction part, there are elements of science fiction in this book, as there are in some of the others, but perhaps a little bit more in this one, even if it's not quite the type of science that we talk about typically, noetic science, a science of consciousness, a science of exploring reality, essentially. I'm not sure if everyone accepts it as a real field of exploration, scientific field of exploration. I didn't know much about it, honestly, prior to reading this book, but it was interesting. In this book, we are exploring whether our consciousness, our mind, whether it's local or if it just might be non-local, meaning it does not reside within our brain. So the premise of this book, this at its heart, consciousness, was something I was very much interested in. Of course, this book throws all kinds of stuff at you. It's silly, more stuff happens before breakfast in this story to our protagonist, Langdon, than would likely happen in your whole life. But that is part of it. This is what you get when you pick up a Dan Brown book. These books, I'm almost ashamed a little bit to talk about because there is a bit of a stigma about reading Dan Brown, I think. Quick interruption. If you're looking for a proper science fiction recommendation, but are already a fan of Dan Brown's storytelling techniques, I think Blake Crouch is the closest approximation I could think of. His books are fast-paced, they're interesting, they have some intriguing ideas, they read quickly, they're easy to read for sure. So a lot of similar trappings that we find in Dan Brown's stories. We have recursion here. We have Pine's trilogy. I only read the first one. I liked it. I should continue. We have Dark Matter, which is probably the one place most readers start if they want to pick up the Blake Crouch book. It's his most famous story. Of course, there's an Apple Plus series now on TV that you could watch. I watched a couple of episodes. I was not hooked. Let me know if it's actually good, if I should continue. But Dark Matter, a good story. It's not like one of my all-time favorite stories, but it's a good one to dip your toes into science fiction with. I think if for someone who hasn't read a whole lot, there is quite a bit of science, some good ideas, mind-bendy stuff. Our protagonist, this is right in the beginning of the book, is hit over the head and made unconscious and then wakes up in a world that seems like his own world, but isn't. His wife seems like his wife, but she isn't. So an interesting premise as he is trying to get back to his reality. Like I said, light on science, light on ideas, even though they're mind-bendy, they're not explored with any degree of, let's call it scientific precision, but fun to read. So these are my examples of science fiction books that are Dan Brown-esque. Let me know in the comments down below what other books you think would fall into that category. Now let's get back to the secret of secrets. I'll be honest with you, I have The Lost Symbol and I haven't read it. So I don't know, it's been many years since I read the last Dan Brown book. And when I saw this at the bookstore and read some of the reviews, I figured this might just be kind of a palate cleanser that I need. And indeed it was. This is a much bigger book than it appears. It's very heavy, almost 700 pages. A good story. It doesn't have quite the huge ending that some of the other books did, but I think it's to its benefit. I liked this story more or less. A lot happens in it. There is a love affair. Langdon finally is in bed with someone. Although, since I haven't read the last book, perhaps this has happened already. Leave a comment down below. Let me know. let me know also if you're reading Dan Brown, what is your favorite Dan Brown story? But in this case, we have a love affair. It's not great, but it's not bad, honestly. So this book, of course, has all the typical trappings of any Dan Brown story. Fast action, people are dropping dead, people are kidnapped, people are running, people are not who they seem to be, but it's all kind of mixed in with this special sauce that Dan Brown possesses, which even though you're cringing at times, even though like, oh my God, no, this isn't realistic at all, you're still kind of enjoying it. So it's a guilty pleasure for sure, reading Dan Brown. And this guilty pleasure is propped up by the fact that Dan Brown has figured out the nexus point of intrigue and suspense, and is really able to capture us, the readers, and just doesn't let us go. And he really makes it seem effortless. I think Da Vinci Code was the first Dan Brown that I read, and I really got hooked. That story about Christianity, about Jesus being a man, think about that, really kind of pulled me into the world of Dan Brown. And from time to time, picking up one of his books and opening up the pages and kind of diving in and knowing what you're gonna get from it and what you're not going to receive makes it for a fun ride. There is a lot about physics also in this book, quantum physics, and I like that exploration as well. There are things that happen, and I don't want to, for fear of spoilers, I'm sure some people want to read this book. I don't want to go in too deeply. Here I'll just say there are some scientific discoveries being made that threaten the exploitation of consciousness into a potential tool for world domination. Interesting premise. There are some scientific elements, some things that are really on the cutting edge, things about precognition. So Dan Brown here revisits something that we read in science fiction books of the past, 50s, 60s. This comes back and yeah, overall it was a good book. It was packaged well. It was a fun read. I enjoyed it. And yeah, I'm glad I read it, and I'm not ashamed to talk about it on Booktube. Feel free to kill me in the comments if you'd like. But if you're someone who's open-minded and you've actually enjoyed some Dan Brown books, let me know which one is your favorite, and maybe I should read The Lost Symbol. Anyway, thanks for watching this short video. I'll talk to you next time.